Thank you all for joining us today. I'm here with Cliff Mygett of the Astronomical League. He's one of our National Observing Program coordinators, which is a very important job to have. We have like 70 or over 70 programs, and Cliff and several other people help administer this whole thing, trying to keep everybody together and doing that. He's also the coordinator of the of several individual programs, such as I'll read them off to you, the Open Cluster program, the Herschel Society, Lunar 2, and Constellation Hunter, which is what he'll be talking about in just a few minutes. Cliff has been active in astronomy for quite a while. Been president of the Olympic Astronomical Society in Washington State. He is a master observer, so he's been at this for a long time, and he's have a lot of experience. Um, this is all in conjunction with the Astronomical League 75th anniversary this year. The actual date of the anniversary is November 15th, started in 1946. So the League has been trying or emphasizing its programs and its different projects, awards, things of that nature throughout the year. We've come a long way since 1946. We started out with about 1,500 people or so. Now we're well over 18,000. We're probably just under 19,000 members, spread across the country and really across the world. We have quite a few international members as well. But thanks to people like Cliff, the league has been able to offer quite a few programs, and we appreciate all the time and effort they put into this, because these things just don't happen by themselves, as you can imagine. So anyway, I'd like to start out and let Cliff take over here and talk about the Constellation Hunter program. And he now has screen sharing capability. So Cliff, if you'd like to say hi and start out, that would be great.
Hi there, Astronomical League. Thanks for joining me and the rest of the Astronomical League and talking about what is very dear to me is actual observing. Um, I know that as the president of the Olympic Astronomical Society, we emphasize the Astronomical League programs, and we, as a small club in Washington State, have many members that have completed many programs, and we actually have a pretty high number of programs for our size club. So we enjoy these programs, and one of the reasons I became a coordinator was to help other people along with these programs understand their value and why we ought to be doing it. So let me get started with Constellation Hunter. I need to call this up. So, and I'm not sure if I remember how to do it. So,
Well, I'll add to something that Cliff has said. The Olympic Astronomical Society has had quite a few members pursue some of these programs. And a few years ago, we did an analysis, and his club, the OAS, had the highest percentage of members uh, fulfilling Astronomical League observing programs. So they've had a lot of experience and know what they're doing, even though they're positioned near the southeast section of the Olympic Peninsula in Western Washington, which is not really known for clear skies.
that is correct, John. And we, as a club, tend to go to Eastern Washington, where we have an actual park that we go to, a state park, and we observe from there a couple times a year, as well as the local state party called Table Mountain. So we do get a chance to get the dark skies on the other side of the Cascades. This
Is
is
that
not a great location for this hobby over here on the western side.
is that over by Soap Lake, somewhere in that region?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is in the Sun Lake State Park, which is about 15 miles up the road from Soap Lake.
Okay.
So it's not far from Moses Lake. I will say that over the years, as Moses Lake has grown, we've had more and more light to contend with. So let's talk about constellation hunters. One of the reasons that we like to do it, and I want to talk about observing programs in general real quickly, and I want to say why an observing program. One of the things that they provide for you are directions for your observation. I know many astronomers go out in the night sky and they look at things that they've seen over and over again. The nice thing about an observing program is it helps you direct those observations and maybe find an object that you're interested in. That's open clusters or globular clusters or the galaxies. There are many programs, and you just need to peruse them. Gives you a goal for your precious observing time. I work full time like many of us do. I take vacation time to do my astronomy. I don't do it from home. I live right across from naval shipyard. I can see those lights. It's very difficult to do it from home. So when I get out into the night sky, I like to have a plan so use that valuable time to my benefit. You also get a reward for your efforts. You get a certificate and a pin. It's a great thing to kind of display and have. It's like, hey, you know, I accomplished something. It also gives you, as I said, an opportunity to focus on a specific area that you might be interested in. There's a couple of people that you may be able to follow in their footsteps: Messier or Herschel, Bernard, E. Bernard, who did Dark Nebula. I really like that guy, and I recommend his biography. Strumpler, Sir Patrick Moore, unfortunately, has passed away, and then Baron Otto von Struve and his son for double stars. So a lot of opportunities to follow those astronomers of past. So each program offers a certificate, as I said, based on certain observing goals, and is recognized with a beautiful award pin. And this is an example of the Herschel certificate and the pin, probably one of the more, I won't say difficult, but a little bit more complex. It takes 400 observations, so that's an award I display proudly. You are required to observe a specific number of objects and with a specific group of specific instruments. So depending on what you like to do naked eye, binocular, telescope, you can do any of those in many programs. You also have no time limit other than the Sky Puppy. You have to be under the age of 11, but most of us are over that age. I'm not too worried about it. So if you start one in 1990, you can finish it up now and still get the award. So no need to rush. In fact, I recommend you take a good amount of time on each object so you can really enjoy what you're seeing in the sky. When you reach the requisite number of objects, you get your log sheets are examined by an appropriate authority, whether a club officer or one of the program coordinators. And then we'll send you a certificate and pin. And what is nice about this programs is they are all part of your Astronomical League membership. So it costs you nothing other than your hard-earned time. And many local societies like to award those in the public venue of a meeting. I know we haven't probably had meetings in a while, or if we have had meetings, they've been virtual. But in my club, as the president, we stand up there at the beginning, and if we have awards to give, we pass those out. Not only is it nice to have some public recognition, but it also other people see it and say, oh, you know, I might have to get some of that recognition and do that kind of work. So that's a general for the programs. And they are designed to show you a variety of objects in the sky, but they also will help you familiarize yourself with how to use your telescope, your binoculars, or even the naked eye. So it gives you some experience. And I will tell you from a personal viewpoint, I started out like many of us did, doing the Messier objects. And I said, well, I've done the Messier objects, I'm going to jump to the Herschel objects. And I was not prepared for that. Those objects were much more dim, and my eye wasn't trained. However, after many years now, my eye is trained, and I find when I skim through the night sky, like, oh, there's a galaxy, yeah, another galaxy. They're just easy to pick out. I've become a galaxy guy. I really enjoy those. And help you learn the night sky, navigation, the ability to find objects in this vastness of space, not just say constellations and knowing the map of the sky, but also how to move around the night sky inside the venue of a telescope or a finder scope. Star hopping, if you will. I like to do star hopping because I feel like I'm on the hunt. And then you'll learn some eye training. You'll learn some techniques that help you see objects better. So those are all advantages of Astronomical League program. So let's talk specifically about the Constellation Hunter. This is a naked eye program, and it has two certifications and pins: the northern sky and the southern skies. And a lot of the southern skies can be done from the southern United States, not completely, but you can get a lot of those knocked out before you take a trip to South America or Australia, or maybe even some of the Fiji Islands to finish that up. They provide an orientation to the sky for novice astronomers, so it is a beginner program. But I will tell you that in my experience, and I have a friend who is an astrophotographer, does great work, and he points his telescope electronically to the night sky, and I said, hey, friend, Al is his name, say, hey, where are you looking at? What constellation? He says, that one. So he doesn't know the sky well, which is fine. That's the way he likes to observe, and that's his choice. But it is nice to know the night sky well enough. So if somebody does ask, hey, where you're looking, what you're looking at, and oh, it's in this constellation, this is where it's located. So just a little bit of effort, and you'll be a constellation hunter, accomplished viewer of the constellations. They don't require any special equipment other than a planisphere. I personally use the Pocket Sky Atlas. It's great because it showed the boundaries of the constellations and it showed the stick figures. You also may need a reference for the brighter star names. So those can also be found in the Pocket Sky Atlas. No and prior knowledge is needed. And then the objects will help. The objective is to provide a forum for the novice to become more familiar with the constellations, the brighter stars, and any deep sky objects that they might see in the constellations. An example is when you're looking in Andromeda, you should be able to see on a good dark night the Andromeda galaxy. So something like that, you'd be able to log in your sheets as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sorry, I had a phone call. You have to edit that. I recommend this program as a first program for every observer. And why do I do that? You will learn the map of the night sky, and that will help you be successful in any observing programs that you do. Once you learn the map of the night sky, as you can see here, then you can kind of jump around inside those constellations and find the objects that you may be after.
Cliff, can I ask a question
Please,
about
please.
this? No, it's not really a question. It's more of a comment. I know what you mean about going out and looking at the night sky and trying to find your way around. And there's some people who just don't know it that well. People ask me, well, how do you find these things in the sky? And I tell them, well, it's a lot like looking at a map of the United States for the first time and having to find Denver. Denver is a big city, but if you don't know the United States, you're gonna have a hard time finding it at first. So the more you're out there, the more you'll learn, the more you can find your way around. It just takes practice.
And that's the key, is practice. And many of us know a couple of the brighter constellations, and those are good stepping points, like Orion or the Big Dipper. Those can be easy stepping points to figure out the rest of the night sky. I've gotten to a point in my knowledge of the night sky that I do night sky tours at all the star parties I attend to anyone that's interested, just to kind of give them some familiarity. I also tell them the stories of the sky. An interesting little point here, we'll do a little vignette here. The constellations in the northern hemisphere are all pretty much based on Greek mythology. However, if you go down to the southern hemisphere, you'll find that many of the constellations are named after scientific instruments or fauna that live in the southern hemisphere. Like there's a constellation Microscopium or Telescopium, or ARA, which is an air pump, which is a scientific instrument. And the reason for that is that the Greeks obviously told stories of night skies, and those stuck with mankind, but we didn't see the southern skies until Magellan, I should say European cultures. Magellan went to the southern hemisphere, and he took astronomers and scientists with him, and they mapped out the skies, and they named them after the birds of prey that they saw down there, or the instruments that they used in their science. So kind of a little tidbit there. All right, you will understand how the sky changes from season to season, because you can't, every night you're not going to see the same thing. Every couple of months it will change. As you do this program, you'll understand how it moves and what constellations are easiest seen in what seasons of the year. And you may learn some great stories associated with the sky. So when I do my night sky tours, I like to tell the Greek mythos stories that are talked about in the night sky. And that's an interest that came to me when I started doing the tours. I could go around and say, well, there's this constellation, that constellation, here's some things to go see in it. But you obviously want to have things a little more interesting. So by telling the stories, people get involved with it. Most people know the stories about Perseus, or the stories of Orion, or any of those. Well, the reason that Scorpius and Orion are in the opposite sky, one's in the summer, one's in the winter, because they fought each other and killed each other. Now they're kept in the night sky, so they'll never fight again. So just little stories like that. The program will better prepare you to find the objects in the night sky, and particularly the Messier objects. You have to do the star hopping. You can't use computer-aided telescopes for that, and so this makes it a little easier once you know it. And it can also be accomplished from any location, city, urban, or rural, which is very nice. And in fact, one of the interesting stories I have about the program, before I was a coordinator, a friend of mine fellow master observer. He did the program from his home in suburban Washington, far from where I live here, and he did it, in about the normal time. But the requirement is you have to mark each star that you see inside the boundaries of the constellation. I decided to do them from our dark sky sites. And for anybody that's been out in the dark sky, when you look at the constellations, it can be very overwhelming the number of stars you see. So it took me quite a bit longer to complete it because I was doing it from the dark sky sites that happened to draw or mark all the stars in the program. But still, it's a great program either way. Okay, there are 39 northern and 57 southern constellations. You have to do all the ones on the list. If you do both the northern and the southern, you will hit all of the constellations, and some of them multiple times, because the southern and northern share a few. You have to log your local date and time, your lat and longitude, and that's easy. You don't have to do it on each sheet. Just say, I was observing from Seattle, Washington, and here along. Every time I see Seattle, I know you're in town. You have to name the constellation. You have to talk about the sky conditions, transparency, and seeing. And there's a lot of information on the Astronomical League website on how to determine transparency and seeing. I won't go into that here. But every program you do, you will have to log transparency and seeing. So it's a good time to learn it, find a system that works for you, and mark it every time, just out of habit. You have to do a sketch of the stars. Now, it's not really hard to sketch stars. They're just dots, so easy to do with the unaided eye and out to the constellation boundaries. Now, that's where the Pocket Sky Atlas comes in handy, because it shows the boundaries of the constellations on each constellation, so you know where you have to go to make sure you get that taken care of. And then any named stars should be identified on the sketch, and there are quite a few. Interestingly enough, all the stars in the sky have Arabic names, not Greek names. Quite interesting. And the main reason for that is the Arab cultures were fine astronomers. They did a lot of observing in the night sky. Of course, they invented algebra and other mathematical methods. And so those names stuck after the European Dark Ages ended, and we started venturing out again and rediscovered the Arabian cultures, and we adopted those star names. So just a little another tidbit about why they're Greek constellations. The stars are Arabic, and of course the Southern Hemisphere is based on European science and exploration. Okay, the sketch that you make should include any objects that are visible within the boundaries, like I say, including but not limited to galaxies or open clusters, nebula. I mean, you will see in the night sky, when you're looking at Sagittarius, you'll probably see the Trifid or any of those other Messier objects on a clear dark sky. Just mark those in. It doesn't have to be fantastic art. I frankly tell people I draw with my feet, so it doesn't have to be a piece of art, it just has to be done. So, and then this is the pin that goes for the northern. You can see that's the Big Dipper, and the southern skies is the Southern Cross. And I think I've given out about 250 Constellation Hunter awards for northern skies, roughly, maybe a little less than that. But the southern skies is less than a dozen, so not a lot of people get a chance to go down there. I have been down there as a Navy man in Australia, and I wasn't involved with the Astronomical League programs at the time, but it was a stunning sky. And the thing that amazed me the most was obviously seeing the Southern Cross, but seeing Orion way up north and quote unquote upside down. We're looking at it from the head up towards the north, so it's kind of disorienting, but it's fascinating down there. I'd like to go down there someday, but we'll see. This is the data. I call it observing form. You can just take this. What I do for observing forms is I cut and paste the information, I put it on a Word file, and I make it into multiple log sheet spots on a sheet of paper front to back, so it's not so thick in a notebook, and just write down your observations and draw your pictures. Excuse me. And I'm not going to go through all the constellations, but like I say, there are 39 northern constellations, and I have had questions about why isn't this or that other constellation in the northern skies. I did not design the program. Aaron Clevenson actually made up the program, but the logic was that some of the constellations that we can see in the north are actually below the celestial equator, and so they fell into the southern skies. And then the northern skies, there are quite a few more. People ask, why are there 57 in the south and only 39 in the north. The reason is a lot of the southern constellations are pretty small. Microscopium, all those are very small. So those are the constellations that you would have to draw if you were going to do the southern skies. And you may notice that Sagittarius is on the list, and Scorpius, and Sculptor, a lot of these Scutum, Serpens, Caput, and Powder, those sextants, all of those you can see from northern. I can see them from up here in Washington. Of course, the farther you get, you will be able to see Triangulum Australia, of course, Virgo, and a
Look,
couple of these others as
Cliff, I'd
well.
like to make a comment
Yes,
on this,
yes.
if I may. You're talking about the size of these constellations, that a lot of the ones in the southern half are on the smaller side. And the ones in the northern half, or at least some of them, are quite large. And this program allows you to see engage distances in the sky. We all, most of us, know how large the Big Dipper is, but you see it on a star map, it looks kind of small, but it's actually pretty large in the sky. So you get an idea of how large or how small these constellations actually are.
That's a very good point. And I like to talk to people about that aspect, particularly when I'm doing a night sky tour. I also like to talk about astrology and the 12 signs of the zodiac, and then point out to people that Ophiuchus, one of the largest constellations in the night sky, is in the zodiac. And so why didn't astrology include that? And then I talk about the non-science aspect of astrology to just kind of point that out, that hey, they did what was convenient. 12 months of the year, 12 signs. So a lot of people are discovering that they may not be a Leo, they might be a Ophiucan now. It's hard to say. So, anyways, moving right along. Oh, well, I guess there's nothing to move along. That was my last slide. Sorry about that. I would say if you're interested in the night sky, you ought to get out there and get this program going, so that you will learn the map of the night sky that we all use. You'll also discover that in your walk, you'll find that there are some constellations that have changed over the last several hundred years, primarily because the International Astronomical Union has taken charge. They are responsible for the boundaries of all the constellations. A fine example is you may have heard of Argo Navis. You may not have, but Argo Navis was a big giant ship that took Jason and the Argonauts on their trip. That constellation was huge. It was a kind of a very far south constellation, but it's been broken up to many pieces. And now they have the Bella, the sails. They have Pictor, which is the compass, and other pieces as well. So you may learn some of that as well. And there is, I'm going to put a plug in here, though we may have a talk on it, I don't know. There is now a program that we approved last year as national program directors called Alternate Constellations. And the goal of that constellation is to help people understand that the current constellations that we use by the IAU were developed primarily by Europeans. But there were many, many other cultures in the world that had similar, or actually mapped the night sky, but had different patterns in the sky for constellations. One of the things I like to point out when I'm talking to people about the night sky, and I point out the first thing I talk about is the Big Dipper, because of its ability to point to the North Star. And it's one thing I say, hey, you find the North Star, you'll never be lost. But what's interesting to me is that the Greeks saw a bear in the Ursa Major, thus they call it a bear. In fact, there was a bear in Europe at the time. They've since become extinct. They were hunted out. But some Native American cultures also saw a bear in that constellation. So it's kind of interesting to me that cultures that are divided by thousands of miles and many, many years saw similar objects in the night sky. Anyways, I'm rambling. But if there's any questions, you feel free to contact me. My email is on the website under the Constellation Hunter program, and I will respond. I respond to any emails that get sent with questions. I'm happy to hear from you if you have some thoughts or you need some assistance.
Well, Cliff, I'm glad that you brought up the alternate constellations. The next program we have scheduled for this is on those,
Okay.
given by, or will be given by Brad Young. So it'll be in a week and a half or so when we finally get to that. But
Great.
yeah, there are a lot of ways of looking at at the night sky. Um, Anybody else have any questions?
I don't have a question. I have a comment. I'd like to emphasize what Cliff said about this program being uh, uh, almost necessary for people just getting started. Um, uh, Once you get the telescope and binoculars, you need to know where you want to point it. And once you become familiar with the constellations, then you become a teacher to other people who are in your family or your friends. And the best way to learn something is to teach it. Also, I found that this program is also good for the more experienced observers, particularly those who are have electronic devices. Um, I did this program a couple of years ago, and it was good for me to learn. Okay, here's a gamma, delta, uh, alpha, beta stars of that constellation, which I tend to ignore. But the Arabic names are also found on electronic go-to devices. So it's good to know what the names of these stars are and where they are. Um, One comment about making sketches, you don't have to be an artist. Just jot something down and it is that's yours. And the Pocket Sky Atlas I found very helpful, but what's even more helpful is the Pocket Sky Atlas Jumbo Edition,
Oh yeah, yeah, I would agree.
because for those of us who need reading glasses in the dark, it's a lot easier to read,
Yes, it
even
is.
for finding things if you're star hopping.
And I only mentioned the Pocket Sky Atlas because it is a more compact version. But yeah, I agree with Al. The jumbo shrimp, as they call it,
Yeah.
is the great one of the greatest objects that we put out there for us. It's
Well,
easy, quick reference to the night sky.
I'll make it 3 for 3 then, because I like the Pocket Sky Atlas as well.
Yeah, it's a good tool. It's a good starting point. I particularly, because I'm a galaxy hunter, but I need to get a bigger overview of the sky, and so I use the Pocket Sky Atlas. Okay, I'm looking in this part of Orion. When I get my uranometry out, it's much more zoomed in, so it helps me to translate from one point to the other. So yeah, go sky and telescope. Am I advertising? I'm sorry.
I'd like to point out that we also have on board with us right now Al Lamperti, who's another observing director for the Astronomical League, one of Cliff's associates. So we have 2 people on here which actually know quite a bit about this program and about amateur astronomy in general. The Constellation Hunter program is a good one to start out with. You learn the constellations, you learn their names, you learn the stars in them, you learn their shapes and all that. And boy, once you get that down, it makes these other programs so much easier. Instead of spending half your time trying to find out where in M13, a great globular cluster, where that is in the sky, how to find that. Well, you kind of already have a good idea about that. Cliff, any final comments? I want to thank you for giving your time to presenting this and preparing the presentation for us. You've done a lot of work for the Astronomical League over the years. I think this Constellation Hunter program's been around about 10 years, excuse me, 10 years or so.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I think Aaron put it together for an anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and he, he was as typical for Aaron, a little loaded up. So I took that from him to help take some load off.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a great program.
so I know that you yourself have put a lot of time into this, as well as the other programs that you have done. The Astronomical League is the organization that it is today, really because of the volunteers it has, including Cliff and Al and all 110 other volunteers we have who handle all this stuff. So we, the league, appreciate everything that all you guys do, and guys and women, men and women, do for not only the league but for amateur astronomy. So I appreciate you taking your time to help us out on this. Um,
Thank you, John. And John is also a volunteer. And John's been doing the league for some time. Thank you, John, for much of all the leadership that you provided as an officer of the league over the years.
well, thank you.
Continue to provide. So.
See, whether you know it or not, you've kind of stepped into the middle of a mutual admiration society.
Yeah. Hey, I think what I would last I'd like to say is I will see you all in a couple of months for open clusters. Be
Oh,
prepared.
right. Yes. As I mentioned earlier, Cliff does coordinate a number of other programs, and we hope to have them featured as well. Um, I'll give one last mention here about the Astronomical League, that this is the 75th year, and we normally have a national convention. Last year was the first time we didn't have one for obvious reasons. This year we'll have a virtual one on August, let me get this right, August 19th, 20th, and 21st. We'll have 3 days of a number of astronomy sessions. It's free to join, but you have to register if you want to be eligible for winning door prizes. The website for that is, I don't remember, I don't have it on hand, but I'll make a slide here. But anyway, with that, I'd like to thank you all for helping out, and everyone out in cyberspace, we'll be seeing you around. Thank you.